Dear shorthand writers, this is English shorthand dictation number 69 and the dictation speed is 140 words per minute. Ready? Start. My fellow citizens, I am speaking to you on the radio after a long interval. However, I feel that I must speak to you about the grave situation that has arisen on our frontiers because of continuing and unabashed aggression by the Chinese forces. We are men and women of peace in this country, conditioned to the ways of peace. We endeavored to follow a policy of peace even when aggression took place on our territory in Ladakh 5 years ago. We know the horrors of war in this age today, and we have done our utmost to prevent war from engulfing the world. But all our efforts have been in vain insofar as our own frontiers are concerned, where a powerful and unscrupulous opponent, not caring for peace or peaceful methods, has not only threatened us but even carried these threats into action. The time has therefore come for us to realize fully this menace that threatens the freedom of our people and the independence of our country. But to conserve that freedom and integrity of our territory, we must gird up our loins and face this great menace that has come to us since we became independent. I have no doubt in my mind that we shall succeed. Everything else is secondary to the freedom of our people and of our motherland. And if necessary, everything else has to be sacrificed in this great crisis. Our border with China in the NEFA region is well known and well established from ages past. It is sometimes called the McMahon Line, but this line which separated India from Tibet was the high ridge which divides the watershed. This has been acknowledged as the border by history, tradition and treaties long before it was called the McMahon Line. The Chinese have in many ways acknowledged it as the border, even though they have called the McMahon Line illegal. The Chinese laid claim in their maps to a large part of the NEFA, which has been under our administration for a long time. The present Chinese regime was established about 12 years ago. Before that, the Tibetans did not challenge it. Yet on this peaceful border where no trouble of fighting had occurred for a long time, they committed aggression, and this also in large number and after vast preparations for a major attack. I am grieved at the setback to our troops that have occurred on this frontier and the reverses we have had. They were overwhelmed by vast numbers and by bigger artillery, mountain guns and heavy mortars which the Chinese forces have brought with them. I should like to pay a tribute to our officers and men who face these overwhelming numbers with courage. But one thing is certain, that the final result of this conflict will be in our favor. It cannot be otherwise when a nation like India fights for her freedom and the integrity of the country. But freedom can never be taken for granted. It always requires awareness, strength and austerity. I invite all of you to be comrades in this great struggle that has been forced upon us. I have full faith in our people and in the cause and in the future of our country. We have followed a policy of non-alignment and sought friendship of all nations. We believe in that policy fully, and we shall continue to follow it. We are not going to give up our basic principles because of the present difficulty. I wish you well, and whatever may befall us in the future, I want you to hold your heads high and have faith and full confidence in the great future that we envisage for our country. The United Nations has grown in the 11 years of its existence. This year particularly, it has assumed an even more important position in world affairs than previously. Of course, even if the United Nations did not do anything wonderful, the mere fact of the United Nations itself has been of great significance to the world. But recently, the United Nations has shown that it can face problems courageously and deal with them with a view to their ultimate solution. Perhaps of the many things that have happened in recent years, this is the most hopeful. It may be that the United Nations decides something occasionally which is not agreeable to some of us. That is bound to happen. But the point is that it provides a forum like this, representing the world community, which can deal with the problems and, if not solve them all at once, can positively try to solve them and ultimately succeed. In spite of the difficulties and the apparent conflicts, gradually the sense of a world community conferring together through its elected representatives is not only developing but seizing the minds of people all over the world. That is a great event. I hope that gradually each representative here, while obviously not forgetting the interests of his country, will begin to think that he is something more than the representative of his country, that he represents, in a small measure, perhaps, the world community. Quite apart from the problems which we have to face, an aspect which worries me often in the manner of facing these problems. It is because of that I welcome this development of a sense of facing the problems from the larger point of view of the world and of the principles which are laid down in the United Nations Charter, which should gradually be translated into effect. You will forgive me if I refer to something which has very powerfully influenced my own country. I represent a generation in my country which struggled for freedom, and in a particular way, under the guidance of Mahatma Gandhi. The one major lesson that Gandhiji impressed upon us was how to do things apart from what we did. Objectives and ends we all have, but what is important is how to proceed in attaining an objective so as not to create a fresh problem in the attempt to solve one problem. Never to deal even with the enemy in such a way as not to leave a door open for reconciliation and for friendship. In this respect, our country and the United Kingdom did set a good example when we came to an agreement resulting in the independence and freedom of India, and resulting further in friendship between the two countries. We had come into conflict with each other for past generations, with resultant feelings of ill will and hostility. Having solved the problem of independence of India, we could forget that past of hostility and be friends. Credit for this is due to both the parties, but to some extent is certainly due to the manner of approach that we had under the guidance of Gandhi ji. There were many occasions in India when there was tremendous anger and bitterness at something that had been done. Our people may have been shot down or beaten down in the public streets, but even when passions were excited, I do not remember a single occasion of an Englishman being unable to walk unharmed through even a hostile crowd in India. That is rather remarkable. I do not say that Indians are more peaceful or better than others. They are as feeble specimens of humanity under stress and strain as any, but have had this repeated lesson driven into their heads. Once or twice, when our people misbehaved, Gandhiji took a step which enraged us younger people at the time. He stopped the whole movement. He said, "You have misbehaved. Stop it." We feel that there is something in it, whether dealing with national or international problems. War comes, and it may be argued whether wars have been good or bad, but after the war we often find that the problems that we have to face are more difficult than those before the war. The problems have not been solved, even though victory has come. The question, therefore, is to solve problems and not perhaps even more difficult problems afterwards. We cannot afford to take a short-term view. We must look ahead. The only way to look ahead assuredly is for some kind of a world order to emerge. If that is so, nothing should be done, even in the excitement of the moment, which comes in the way of the evolution of that order. Nothing should be done which increases hostility, hatred, and bitterness. There is plenty of hatred and bitterness in the world today. We all feel it.